The CW Chronicles. Sinners. Written by Silvano Williams. All content copyright 2013-2023. All rights reserved. Chapter 12. A Little Taste of Pain. Pity was not a known emotion for Villain. Just a few minutes ago, before Ilona showed up, and as he explained the history of the Froggies to CW, he had forced CW to watch the death of the Froggies on the mainland. Many Space Armada ships had flown down to the planet and even purposefully crashed into the small settlements to destroy the remains of this simple civilization. Making things worse, the Froggies that survived the slaughter had gleefully jumped into the pits of lava that had cracked the mainland in half. Jagged metal skeletons of ancient buildings violently protruded from the ground as the land turned inside out, impaling many more Froggies that fell or jumped into the chasms. Villain stood over CW, his boot shoved firmly on CW's throat under his large chin. Villain looked down at him with a cocked head, and although his mask was void of any signs of emotion, he projected disdain. Gripped in his gloved steel-like hand, he still held the weakened Froggy. Its broken arm hung limply by its side. Torrential rain quickly enveloped them.
"Tell me your oath, Weenie. Speak it aloud, so I can understand it,"
Villain said and knelt next to CW. He pulled his foot off CW's throat and pushed CW's chest down with his knee instead.
"It is,"
CW began, but when Villain savagely thrust his forearm against CW's throat, CW choked. This incensed Villain, since he saw no reason for CW to act hurt by it. Like him, CW was invincible, yet CW persisted with this charade of weakness. Villain pressed his body weight down harder on CW, commanding him to continue.
"Say it,"
he shouted. CW looked sympathetically at the Froggy in Villain's hand, and did as ordered.
"It is my oath,"
he said in a faint voice,
"to protect the natural cycles of life, to respect and enforce the laws of the land and its societies, to behave unselfishly and with honor, to use my powers only for the pursuit of truth, justice, and the evolution of life and the mind in the cosmos."
There were no feelings of gratification in Villain. He stood up off CW, and motioned for him to sit up. CW did as instructed, still attempting to keep the last remaining Froggy away from harm.
"You refuse to uphold the law of this land and protect their chosen cycle of life,"
Villain scoffed.
"What will you do now that your own oath is at odds with what must be done? The only thing you have accomplished with any certainty is stunting your own potential, Weenie. And by doing that, you have interrupted my evolution."
Villain brought the Froggy up to CW's face.
"But no more. I will destroy your limitations. I will make it easy for you."
He rubbed the top of the Froggy's head against CW's cheek in a teasing manner. CW jerked his head back.
"Kill this pitiful thing, and let's begin our ascent to our thrones as gods in the cosmos."
Villain sneered.
"No,"
CW said, repeatedly shaking his head as he crab walked away from Villain on the slippery mud. Villain was not concerned about CW retreating. He walked away from CW and toward his ship, caressing its exterior with his hand as he walked past it until he reached the cargo area.
"I knew you would take this stance,"
Villain said and opened the cargo hold. Inside, next to a metal crate, were a pair of thick reinforced black gauntlets. Villain dropped the Froggy next to them, then reached in to put the gloves on. The crate suddenly shook. Gurgling and clucking sounds could be heard from within it.
"I am done with the talk anyway, Captain,"
Villain said, grabbing the crate by the sides.
"Let's get down to a much bloodier business."
Villain opened the top of the steel crate. The scratches and fluttering from within it sounded like a clawed-winged beast was trying to escape. Villain then reached inside the crate, and from within it, he pulled out a creature so vile that even Villain's stomach turned. He held it by its long headless neck, out of which blood squirted into the air. He was cautious not to get any of the blood on himself, driven by an uncontrollable urge to avoid it. Villain not only found this thing repulsive, but he was also afraid of its blood. It had a red and pink, veiny fleshy neck. Its throat was covered in a wad of brilliant white feathers, which were abnormally devoid of any blood stains or dirt. The tanned bumpy skin on its chicken-like body was bare, yet it wildly flapped its small featherless wings trying to escape. It had thick muscular thigh muscles, skinny avian legs, and clawed feet which scurried frantically trying to run away. The mysterious, headless, bleeding, running chicken was indeed one of the most repulsive, hideous, unnatural things I've ever seen. Not just in appearance, but in its presence and the feelings it recalled by just looking at it. The chicken gurgled and kicked at Villain, trying to cut him with its talons to free itself. Blood squirted out of its neck in what seemed to be an endless supply. Villain squeezed its neck, making even more blood gush from it. It landed all over Villain's fighter and on the ground near them. The blood boiled the water it came in touch with, and seconds after, evaporated from the ship's metal surface. What splashed on the wet, muddy soil immediately evaporated the water, but turned the dirt's organic content black and brittle, puddling into a mass of rotten coagulate as it slowly absorbed into the earth. CW's mouth fell agape in horror as he tried to deny the sight of it all.
Why have you captured it?
CW was almost in shock and frozen in place.
That abomination is wrong, Villain. It should not exist.
Villain closed the distance between himself and CW with several long steps. Using his full strength, he grabbed CW by the throat again. CW still did not resist him. In one swift motion, Villain straddled CW in midair and brought him down to the ground on his back. Villain then moved his hand from CW's throat and grabbed CW's jaw to pry his mouth open.
As I said before, neither should we, but here we are, aren't we? Now, open up.
Villain roared and pointed the mysterious, headless, bleeding, running chicken's stream of decayed blood at CW's face. The vile liquid quickly filled up CW's mouth. CW struggled to escape but was no match for Villain's unleashed fury. The chicken's blood began to ulcer CW's skin in small patches. CW arched his back in spasms as the blood soaked his head and made his skin slippery in Villain's grip. CW writhed and resisted the urge to cry out in pain, but it was more than he could tolerate. He spluttered the blood in his mouth out into the air to let out a long and pain-filled wail that resounded throughout the planet. Suddenly, an energy blast deflected off Villain's back.
Release him at once, Villain.
Ilona yelled from somewhere in the near distance. Villain looked around to find her, but he could not see her. She was cloaked inside the wall of sideways rain and smoke surrounding them. He concentrated on scanning the area with his keen sense of sight to find Ilona, not realizing there was a reaction from the blood that boiled on CW's face and his hand's skin. It had dissolved the thick protective gloves. Villain tried to stand up to find Ilona, but his melting hand anchored him down. He could not pull it away from CW's neck. CW screamed out in pain again. This time, Villain accompanied him with an angry, inharmonious roar. Villain's glove had completely melted away. His blood-soaked hand fizzled and smoked with the vaporizing rain. He slid it down from CW's throat to the medallion on CW's chest, where Villain thought he could better grip the solid, non-organic surface. He wrapped his fingers around the medallion, where his hand hardened in place. Villain could not control it. Ire filled every inch of him, as he pulled CW up into the air and over his own head. Villain yanked the mysterious, headless, bleeding, running chicken's neck away from CW, and howled in agony. He recognized the pain from the chicken's blood, which he thought he could manage, but something else was happening. He felt sensations within himself that he had not felt before. Jolts of electricity from CW's medallion shocked Villain through his arm. The searing pain of the slow burn that had melted his fingers disrupted Villain's very thoughts. Villain felt despair, horror, and sadness, but worst of all, he felt a connection with CW, who felt these things tenfold. Villain could not comprehend CW's anguish but felt it to his very core. In another attempt to free himself, Villain crouched and jumped over 300 feet into the air with the chicken and CW in each hand, angrily slamming CW on the ground when he came down. The entire mainland shook and cracked under the power of his slam.
I said release him.
Ilona ordered. She stepped closer, and out of the cover that previously protected her, to shoot at Villain again. The blast hit Villain on the hand that held the chicken. He recoiled in pain, involuntarily releasing the foul beast. The chicken landed on its feet and scuttled away. Ilona took several shots at it, but was unable to hit the wobbling creature as it sprinted away into the cover of its chaotic surroundings. She pointed her blaster back at Villain, who had finally spotted her.
I went to hell and back to find that thing,
he yelled at her.
You are going to hell today, Villain.
Ilona answered, undaunted, and shot at him again. Villain unwillingly put his free hand up for cover. The plasma bolt absorbed into his skin, and before he even had a chance to second-guess himself as to why he had covered up, the agonizing sensation from the burning plasma woke him up to the realization that his body had involuntarily cowered from the prospect of pain, just as CW often did. Villain tried to pry his hand free from CW's medallion, but couldn't. They had fused. CW bravely held on to Villain's forearm to keep him from retaliating against Ilona. She shot again, this time hitting Villain on the shoulder. Both CW and Villain screamed out in pain upon the impact of her blasts. Ilona continued to shoot at Villain relentlessly until he fell backward on the ground, squirming in pain alongside CW. Villain's and CW's vociferous wails silenced the thundering from the skies and were heard around the entire planet. Ilona dropped to her knees and covered her ears to shield herself from the pain caused by the sound waves. In a desperate effort to free himself, Villain kicked CW's arms away, stepping on them at the elbows for leverage, and pulled at his arm with all his might. Villain felt the slow rips of every cell in his hand as he pulled it free. The pain fueled him to pull even harder. Villain bent down and pulled harder and harder each time, pulling on his arm back until his fingers, which had deformed around CW's golden medallion and into CW's skin, began to snap off one at a time. Still down on her knees, Ilona aimed at Villain again, this time hoping to make it the final shot. Villain saw her, and with his supernatural speed, placed his injured hand, still partially attached to CW, on the path of her blast. The blast exploded Villain's remaining fingers away, which finally broke him free from his bond with CW. CW fell back, putting his hands up to his face to wipe the chicken's blood away, but the pain from his melted face stopped him. Instead, he clutched at his chest and grabbed his medallion. Underneath it, a spike of shockingly brutal physical and emotional pain impaled him, as Villain's fingers were absorbed through CW's skin and into his heart. Ilona got up and walked closer, finally being able to see clearly enough through the storm to realize what had happened to CW's face. She stopped and cried out in shock. Suddenly, Villain jumped and landed in front of her. He was not trying to kill her. Instead, he looked to scare and intimidate her, to use her against CW. It was a mistake. Without any hesitation, Ilona brought her blaster up to his masked face and shot him. His right eye blackened with the blast, and Villain once again growled in pain. Nevertheless, he didn't pull away this time, even as the ruby-colored goggles shattered into pieces. Ilona had blinded him in one eye. Angered, Villain slapped Ilona's blaster away from her, instantly crushing her wrists and her forearms. She spun into the air from the hit, and fell to the ground semi-unconscious from the shock. Villain felt bewildered by the darkness in his right eye, yet the pain was not as severe as what he had felt on his hand. He was angry at Ilona's intrusion, but cunningly saw another opportunity to coerce CW into fulfilling his destiny. He grabbed Ilona by the hair and tossed her next to CW. She landed hard and hit her head on CW's chest. CW felt the impact but was too weak to help her. Villain then stomped over to his ship and pulled the froggy out of the crate. He held it carelessly by its ragged clothing, which caught on its neck, choking it. He then stood over CW and Ilona. Looking at his fingerless hand, Villain tried to make a fist with the remaining stubs. The pain he felt rapidly dissipated and turned to anger, which caused him to repeatedly strike CW's distorted face, disfiguring it further with the blunt blows.
You will kill it, or I will do it and then kill her and the rest of your friends, Weenie.
Villain screamed at him. CW opened his tear-filled eyes and looked at the froggy that dangled inches from him. He turned to see Ilona unconsciously moaning in pain next to him. CW's voice was muted and broken. It was no longer soothing but instead painful to hear.
I can't, villain.
He slurred with a raspy tone.
Weenie, one last time. Either you kill this pitiful beggar, or you kill your dimension police slave. If you do not, I will kill them both and then kill every living being in every dimension.
I cannot. I cannot take life.
CW pleaded. Villain put his boot to Ilona's head and pushed her down into CW's unwavering chest.
Take off your beanie.
Villain growled. CW hesitated, but felt the increased pressure on his chest. Ilona groaned in pain. CW reached up with both of his hands and grabbed the beanie with his fingertips.
Please let them go. You can have it. You can have anything. I will no longer get in your way, but please stop.
CW pleaded with Villain and slowly pulled the beanie off his head.
Put it on its head,
Villain said, placing the froggy under the beanie.
Villain, please. I cannot. It will kill it.
CW felt Ilona's body tighten up in a spasm after another nudge from Villain's boot on her head. She completely passed out.
Villain, please.
CW cried again, but his hands involuntarily moved his beanie closer to the froggy's head. A series of pulsating cold shocks from his chest overwhelmed him, darkness seeping into him as he felt hope for the froggy's survival dissipating.
Villain, I have stood down. I will not interfere with you ever again. But please, let them live.
He pleaded, finally defeated.
Kill it.
Villain roared, pushing down harder on Ilona.
If it dies, I promise you, I will allow her to live.
Please.
CW sobbed uncontrollably and closed his eyes, unable to stop his hands as they inched the beanie closer to the froggy. Then, just as the beanie was a hair away from touching the froggy, its head exploded. CW dropped the beanie as he fell back, hitting his head with a loud thump on the muddy ground, where he began to weep uncontrollably. A greater pain, unlike any CW had ever imagined, paralyzed him from within. Villain was confused and looked all around for an explanation.
How did it die, Weenie?
Villain questioned when something in the sky caught his attention. It was a parachute with a Dimension Police logo and a chair dangling wildly underneath it, gliding through the stormy skies toward him. Villain focused on the guy with the smoking cannon pointed down at him, and realized the froggy had been shot in the head. I had done it. Honor your word, scumbag. I yelled at him and shot him in the chest,